What's going on, guys? This is Exotic Gaming here, and I want to thank you for clicking on this video. Today I'm proud to present to you all another top 10 tips video for PUBG Mobile, or in other words, 10 more things pros do in PUBG Mobile. The goal of this video is to teach you something new, so I hope I can accomplish that. If you're wanting to get better at this game, I can guarantee we have some awesome tips in store here. I already made a top 10 tips video about 2 months ago now, so this video is a continuation off of that one. If you haven't seen that one, I'd highly recommend it. I'll link it down below in the description. So yeah, before we begin, all I ask is for you to leave a like on the video. It takes a few seconds, but it helps out the channel oh so much. And hey, who said this channel will stop at 700,000? Let's try and get to 800,000 subscribers in record time. So subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. I make tons of PUBG content, so turn on notifications if you don't want to miss out on the next video. You don't. I'm telling you that now. With that being said though, without further ado, let's jump into this. The first pro tip on this list that I cannot stress enough to you guys is something that may seem obvious, but people forget when they're caught in the heat of the moment. When you kill someone in the game, what do? Well, natural tendency would be to go to the body, check it, and see if there's anything that could be of value to you, right? Well, sometimes this does work well, but a lot of times, especially in later parts of the game, those death crates are basically a message saying, hey, someone died here within the last couple of minutes, be careful. So that means don't loot death crates unless you absolutely need them. In endgame, if you're going to a death crate to loot it, there's almost a guarantee a scope is pointed towards you. So be prepared if you need to loot, you might get into some gunfire. This is why a lot of times pros come across a death crate and don't even bother looting. It's far too risky. Follow in their footsteps. Next tip is so simple, but something so many people don't even realize helps so much. The second thing pros always do in PUBG Mobile is they customize certain control buttons to be way more transparent than the default setting in order to see way better. Think about it. Say you play on a pretty small device, okay? Maybe you have the iPhone SE, and I mean, I've held that phone before. I used to have the iPhone 5, and it's basically the same size. The buttons take up so much of the screen, and they really get in the way of everything. Now, what if you were to simply make them transparent so you can see through them and then leave more space for your ability to spot enemies? It seems like a no-brainer. So yeah, pick and choose which buttons you want to make more transparent, and you'll soon realize you have a much better time spotting enemies because of it. It's an awesome pro tip so many people look past. The third thing pros will always do in PUBG Mobile saves them countless numbers of times. When you knock someone in duos or squads in this game, it's again another natural tendency to want to finish them off. I mean, it's gonna give you another kill, right? Who wouldn't want that? Well, sometimes you don't. You need to look at this strategically. Sometimes it's actually in your best interest to knock people down and then not finish them. Yet. See, when your teammate is knocked, you obviously want to try and revive them as soon as possible. You only have so much time to do so. However, this is the time where you're the most vulnerable. On the other side of the coin, when you knock down someone, their team will be focused on reviving them and they'll be less focused on you. This is your perfect time to catch them off guard and get up to 3 more easy kills if you're in a squads match. Pros always do this, and you should too. You know another thing pros always do? You'll know this if you watch their streams a lot. I know I notice this whenever I watch other streamers. The fourth thing a pro will always do is never peek the same side of a building, rock, or from the same window or anything along those lines. If you're in a building with 2 windows facing one direction and you're trying to peek the enemy outside and snipe them, don't keep peeking outside the right window every single time. Your best bet is to be random and sporadic. Peek right, then right again, then left, then right, then left twice, and basically make it so the enemy will never be able to anticipate which window you'll be peeking from. If you can get the enemy to be confused in this aspect, you'll have the upper hand because you'll be able to get a shot on them before they have a shot on you, because most likely they'll have to move their scope slightly. This is a great tip that'll help you win a lot of fights in buildings. Moving right along here, another pretty simple pro tip that'll probably end up giving you more consistent wins than most other general tips is this. Pros always keep a gas can and try to keep their car for as long as possible. Unless you're in a weird spot where a car will actually cause your player to move slower, you generally want to have a car at all times because it'll allow you to escape the zone easily, get out of bad situations, and simply be a lifeline for you. However, never forget the gas can. If you're driving around most of the match, chances are you'll find other cars you can switch into, but sometimes not, and then you'll run out of gas. And sitting in a car with no gas is even worse than standing in the middle of an open field next to an airdrop. Try to avoid open vehicles, so things like the open UAZ and any other form of motorbike, don't go into those, and get into things instead like the Dacia or closed UAZ. Cars and gasoline is a perfect recipe for successfully getting into endgame. Now, we have first-person mode and third-person mode, and both modes require very different types of play styles. When you're playing in first-person, you'll be a lot more blind and kind of rush into situations a little more haphazard. Third-person mode is super strategic, though. I mean, you can hide behind a wall and see around it, and that gives you so many better options on what action you should take next. More often than not, the person who peeks first will generally be the one who loses the fight, so be patient and use that to your advantage. A pro will never peek until he's ready to fire, and you'll generally know the right time to fire is when the enemy is visible on your screen. It may seem like a passive way to play, I understand that, but that's the truth. So if the enemy sees where you are, get into good cover, wait for them to peek first, and then when you're ready to fire, bam, lights out for them. They won't even know it hit them. So, sort of contrary to what we just said earlier, we can't say PUBG is the game for campers, because it's really not. Maybe at certain times it can be, but a key thing pros always do in this game, and this being the 7th thing on this list, is they always change their position. Unless you're in the middle of a gunfight and are pinned down and can't move, you should always be adjusting your position. You should never lie prone behind the same tree for 5 minutes straight. Even if you think you're in a good spot, what happens if someone repositioned behind you? They'll probably spot you before you spot them, and then you're screwed. If you're constantly moving around, yes, of course they can spot your physical character moving, but this will make you a harder target, and you'll never be a sitting duck. Watch a pro on stream next time. They'll never camp. They always move around, and that's by no means an accident. Now, the third to last thing pros always do is so crucial in helping them getting better at PUBG Mobile. You might not know this, but unless a pro streamer literally streams themselves in regular Battle Royale 24/7, a good chunk of their time is spent in practice. And how do these players practice? Well, they don't necessarily always go into the same old 100-player Battle Royale. You'll only encounter on average 10 to 15 players in these matches, but they take up massive amounts of time, up to 40 minutes for one match. If they jump into arcade mode or war mode, they can encounter a far greater number of players and in turn learn the guns way faster, learn parts of the map way quicker, and be much more experienced when they encounter an enemy. If you survey any pro, you'll find over half of them spend more than half of their time practicing in arcade mode or war mode. The developers added these game modes in for a reason. They'll help you get way better super quickly. So the second to last tip sort of piggybacks off of what we said in tip number 7, but hey, pros don't stand still. They are always constantly moving around. Now, this doesn't necessarily just mean adjusting their position and then lying prone and sitting there. They literally do not stop moving. If a pro doesn't know where his nearby enemies are, he will be moving left and right, staying on alert, just a little bit moving to avoid anyone with a sniper getting an easy one-shot headshot. This also applies to looting, but we talked about that in the last video. Far too many times when these pros were just starting out, they could have easily survived the situation, but since they were standing still, they died. Even when they're firing at an enemy, they're moving around just a little bit, because especially with something like the AKM, the spread will be 10 times more difficult to control for the enemy when you're moving around left and right. So try it out and see if it helps. And last, but certainly not least, the final thing pros will always do in PUBG Mobile is weigh the fight they're currently in and see whether or not they want to continue forward with killing the enemies or back away. Sometimes they don't take the fights. Now you might be a little shocked because you always see hyper-aggressive gameplay from people where they literally kill everything that moves. But on an average day, a pro who isn't looking to beat their kill record or impress their subscribers sometimes backs away from fights. If you're in a bad position and the enemy has the upper hand and you only have your car nearby, you might just want to jump back into the car and speed away so you don't die earlier on. I mean, in the end, you'll probably encounter that guy again in a smaller circle, so why not just kill him later on when you're in a better spot? Pros always ask this question, and if you do that, you'll be that much closer to being a pro yourself. And would you look at that? That was the last tip. Those were 10 pro tips that will help your PUBG Mobile gameplay immensely. If you look up to the pros and want to be like them, you should start with these 10 tips. Follow them and memorize them, and that way you'll be that much closer to being a pro yourself. I really hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something new. If you agreed with what I had to say, then I would greatly appreciate it if you took just a second and left a like rating down below. If you haven't checked out part 1 to this 2-part series, then I highly recommend doing so because there are 10 more pro tips listed in that video. Again, as I said in the beginning, that video is linked down in the description. Subscribe to my channel for some of the best PUBG Mobile tips and tricks videos there are, and turn on notifications if you've watched this far. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.